Good morning and welcome to Sunday Morning Musings with Fuzzy. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, I ask that, again, you put words into my mouth. You allow everyone who is watching this, listening to this, whenever that is, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, that you allow them to feel the presence of you in their lives so deeply and desperately that there'll be no doubt that they know. And I ask you, dear Father, this morning that you allow this small message to become exactly what we're going to talk about. That little mustard seed that grows profusely, that grows wildly, that grows fast. And I ask you, dear Father, to do that in your Son's name. Amen. This morning, I want to talk about the mustard seed. And the mustard seed is an interesting little seed. It has been used for thousands of years, even dates back to the Roman Empire. We read, we have read about it in manuscripts that they found even before that, where that mustard seed was ground up and used for medicinal purposes and or for making condiments with it. It is in its rare form, in its raw form. It is very, very potent and has to be tamed down a little bit and mixed with other things to make it less potent and able to eat it on foods and things. The Roman Empire has been said that they took grape juice and mixed with that mustard seed that they'd ground up and to tame it down just a little bit so that it wouldn't be quite as strong. And so it's a very potent little seed. It typically measures 1 to 2 millimeters. And to give you an idea for those of us who grew up in the United States and didn't use millimeters, that 1 millimeter is about the size of the end of a lead pencil, and 2 millimeters is about the size of the end of a crayon. And so very small, but very potent. The other thing about mustard plants, which the mustard seed comes from, is that they don't grow necessarily like a tree. They grow more like a bush. And they produce this little tiny small seed. And because of that, they can be blown all over everywhere. Birds and other animals can eat some of them and spread them wherever. And they multiply very fast. They spread all over everywhere very fast. And the last very interesting thing about a mustard plant is that a mustard plant can grow very large and almost like a tree, which is kind of interesting, I thought. And so when Jesus was talking about having faith like a mustard seed or being like a mustard seed, everybody in his culture knew what he was talking about. They knew how small it was. They knew how fast it grew. They knew how fast it spread. And they knew how tart it was. And they knew how strong it was. And they knew all the things they needed to know about it. They also knew that it grew very large. And so when he began to talk about the mustard seed and how it worked in everybody's lives and how it worked in the church proper, they all understood what he was talking about because it was the same thing that he intended for the church, the Christians of that day, to, even though as small as they were, small numbers that they were strong. They would spread wildly like mustard seed bushes do, and they could grow to a very large group if left unattended, which they planned on being left unattended. And so that was Jesus's plan. And when he talked about the mustard seed, that was his plan for not only us, but the church proper. This morning, for the purposes of this particular musings, I want to talk about us more than the church. The, the church, your pastors and other people that you go to with church can talk about church. I just feel like we need to talk about us personally today and what this story of the mustard seed means for us. Where can we take it? What can we do with it? How can we use it? And what does it mean in our lives? Well, there are many, many people that I know right today, including myself, that have had heartache, have had health issues, have had uh, things going on in their life that they couldn't control. They've had things in their past that they couldn't control and still haunt them today in some ways, some way, shape, or fashion. And Jesus says that those people, everyone who has faith like a mustard seed, will be able to get their troubles taken care of. And I think that this brings up a valuable lesson for us, is because many people that I've met in my life, including myself, felt like they needed to know Jesus fully before they could get healed and get well. And I've talked about this lots of times before. And if you're watching this and have watched me before or know me from somewhere, you know that I talk about this a lot. I think the way people think about how they should know Jesus is exactly backwards. And I can attest to that because that's exactly how I felt. I think that many times we come to a place where we feel like we aren't worthy, that we don't have the power to change our lives, that we don't believe in God and or Jesus, but just a little tiny bit. And that because of that, we need to get well, we need to get healed, we need to get to a good place before we let Jesus in our lives. Again, just backwards. I believe that that is the exact time you need to let Jesus in your life so that he can help you heal, so that he can help you get better, so that he can help you move forward in your life, so that he can help you not or stay in the past and not dwell in the past, but move into the future and move forward. That is what I believe Jesus wants us to do. And that's, I believe, what Jesus can do. And so if your faith is small, then you have really nothing to worry about because Jesus himself says that even if your faith is as small as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. You can be who you want to be. And let's talk about that a little bit. Down deep, I believe no matter how low somebody else, no matter how bad they feel about themselves, no matter how much they don't think they're worth anything at all, sometimes because they've been told that all their lives, or they just feel that themselves. Maybe you've let people down. Maybe you've screwed up. Maybe you made big mistakes in your life. Maybe you haven't made good decisions in your life. Whatever those things are that keeps you to feeling like you're not worthy, that all it takes is just that little tiny small, just that little bit of faith. And if you're watching this Sunday morning musings today, my guess is that you do have at least a small amount of faith, or you wouldn't have put it on, or you wouldn't be listening to me right now. If you have that little tiny bit of faith, then that's all it takes to have Jesus change your life. For me, it was important to know that I wasn't alone. It was important for me when I rededicated my life to Christ, when I allowed Christ to begin to start making me who I was supposed to be, when I allowed Christ to come into my life and change the me. It was important for me to know that I could do that, even though many times in my life I was told that I'd never amount to anything and I could never. do anything and I would never be anybody. I needed to know that I could be. And when Jesus came into my life, when I asked Jesus to come into my life, my whole life changed. Because then this little faith, this little tiny mustard seed of faith, began to start growing and began to start pushing out and began to multiply, began to spread across my whole body and my being and my world, and began to grow large. And the longer I cultivated it, and the longer I fertilized it, and the longer I gave it water, and the longer I allowed the master to take care of that mustard seed, the fuller I felt, the more powerful I felt, and the more free I felt, and the more giving I felt, and the more changed I felt. And trust me in this, and what I'm getting ready to say, my mustard seed of faith was so small that you could not hardly have seen it, as if it was less than a size of a end of a lead pencil. I had no faith. I I was in a very dark, deep, dark place and really had no faith. And that little bit of faith changed my life. It brought people into my life that helped me get to work through that, to build off of that. It brought people into my life that loved me and cared for me and lifted me up and told me I was going to be something, that I was going to amount to something. It brought people into my life that allowed me to believe in myself. That little bit of faith, that little bit of mustard seed changed my life. And that's where we come into you. That's how we come into making sure that you can have your life changed too. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, your life can be changed. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you are thinking that, my life's just perfect the way it is. I don't want to disrupt it. It's just fine. And for those people, I'm saying, well, you may think it's fine, but are you really truly doing what you need to be doing for Jesus? Are you just going to church and following the rules and just meandering through life and just being a blob on a wall? Are you really truly doing what you really truly need to do for Jesus? And then there's those that are listening that know people and or are people who don't think they're worth anything at all, that think that they have done so many bad things that there's no way that Jesus can forgive them for those, and that they can't follow him, can't possibly be the person that will change the world. And this is what I'm going to tell you. You are watching Sunday Morning Musings with Fuzzy. And I can tell you that while I'm not a perfect person, I'm not the best person that you'd ever want to meet, I'm not even the wherefore-all of Christianity. But I can tell you this, from where I was at the age of 26 years old, I had nothing. I worked paycheck to paycheck. I chased women. I drank like a fish to somehow allow my life to be anesthetized so I didn't feel the pain of the life that I was living. I had turned my back from God. I turned my back from Jesus. I turned my back from all the people that were praying for me and wanted to love me, wanted to care for me. I turned my back from pretty much everything that I had believed. I still had this little mustard seed of faith. And then one night, and I share this openly, honestly, with a lot of people, but this is the first time I think I've actually shared it here. When I was in my early 20s, I started a business called Lake Welding and Sign, the precursor of Lake Innovative Group. And when I started that business as a young man, I did a lot of welding out and about in the country and farmers and things like that. And many times they paid me in cash, or I carried cash with me a lot. And I felt like because I carried all that cash with me that I needed protection. So I filed for a gun permit, state of Indiana, and got it. And I bought a 357 Magnum police special. And I carried it loaded with me pretty much all the time. And that's where it got really ugly, because one night at my apartment, I sat on the front steps with that gun and I had it in my mouth. And I truly knew that I was going to pull the trigger. I had the hammer pulled back, and I can remember the sound of the barrel as I was shaking, move around and hit my teeth. I remember it like it was yesterday. When I woke up the next morning, the gun was laying on the table beside the couch, the hammer still pulled back. And obviously I had not pulled the trigger. Don't know why. I have an idea of why. I have an idea that it was that small little mustard seed, that small little bit of faith that protected me that night, that kept me from doing that, so that I could be here today to be talking to you, so I could amount to something, so that if I could change one life, then my life was worth something. It's an amazing thing when you take all those things that might have been and you move them into this is what is, and you change the trajectory of everything in your life. I love life. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my grandkids. I love Jesus. I love everything about my life right now. And sure, there are heartaches. You know, we've endured stuff. We left Indiana, closed a business. Wife retired, had to go back to work. I had to go back to work. I got COVID and almost died 2 years ago. Got COVID again last August, not nearly as bad. I have aches and pains of I guess it's the consequence of getting old. But all in all, my faith is not a mustard seed anymore. My faith is a mustard bush with lots and lots of seeds, and very potent seeds. And my faith has grown into this massive bush that's bigger than life, and sometimes even exudes an arrogance of believing in Jesus. I believe so wholly and heartily in Jesus today, and believe that he can change everything, that it almost seems like that I have some pixie dust and fairy tales about what Jesus can do. But I know what Jesus did with my life. And I know how he changed my life, and how he continues to move me towards that change, and how he continues to melt me and mold me in the way that he wants. That came from that little tiny mustard seed when I was so far away. And you can too. This morning, I'm going to offer up a special prayer for everyone. But at the end of the prayer, I want to offer up a prayer for those of you whose all they have is a mustard seed, and they need to somehow find Jesus to change the trajectory of their life. Most gracious Heavenly Father, I just thank you and praise your name for those who believe in you, for those who carry on your word, move forward and with you in their lives. I ask you, Father, to touch them and just allow them to continue the fight, continue the battle, continue the war of telling people about your Son, Jesus Christ. I ask you, dear Father, now a special prayer. If there's anyone that's watching this, listening to this at any time in the future, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now, I ask you, dear Father, that allow them to pray this prayer. Dear Father, I have just so little faith, but you say that faith is like a mustard seed and can grow into a mustard bush and can grow wildly and very large. I want that, dear Father. I want that so desperately that you come into my life and you change that. And you allow that mustard seed to grow in me so that I can become who I'm supposed to be. I ask you, dear Father, to be with me and touch me and hold me and lift me up when I'm down. I ask you, dear Father, to do this. Amen. Now, if you were one of those who prayed that prayer today, I want you to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on my Facebook page in a private message. You can reach out to me on my phone. That's 765-265-1656. That's the number I've had since the beginning of the cell phone age. It's never been changed, and I don't intend to change it anytime in the future. Or you can shoot me an email if you don't feel like social media would be okay. And that would be fuzzycism@gmail.com. fuzzycism@gmail.com. Well, I'm so blessed to be able to bring you this message, and we want you to have a blessed day. So go out and grow them mustard seeds. Have a great day. God bless.